I'm joined by Becky Griffin, the University of Georgia Pollinator Health Associate. And Becky, we're talking about fireflies. So anyone who has been in Georgia for any amount of time has probably seen one, but you may have also noticed if you've been here for a long time that the population seems to be declining. So let's start with the basics. Can you tell me what fireflies are and why they glow?
All right. Some people call them fireflies. Most of the time in the South, we call them lightning bugs. And we see them glow in the evening, and actually you can see some really in the middle of the night. And they're glowing at night really to find a mate. So they produce chemicals in their body that, when combined, produces a light that doesn't generate heat, which is really cool. And that is how they find a mate in the wild systems.
And if someone wants to see a lightning bug, what's the best time and where are the best locations to see them?
All right, so the best time for our eastern firefly, which is our most common one, is just after dusk. So just as it's getting dark. And the best thing is to go outside in a darkened area, keep those outdoor lights off. That's really important. And the more wild area, the better. Sometimes you'll find them in subdivisions, but a lot of times you need to go to where there's tall grass, maybe some trees and bushes in the areas that get a little moisture. So around a creek is a really good idea, around a swampy area. That's where you're going to see most of them.
And I feel like every single animal, every single bug, no matter how small, has a pretty important role when it comes to its ecosystem and kind of keeping things going. So where do lightning bugs fall when it comes to their role in Georgia's ecosystem?
And that's a good question, and that's something most people don't understand. Lightning bugs have a kind of a complex life cycle, and the part of the life cycle that we see, the flashing beetles in the evening, is just a short part of their life cycle. They spend most of it as a tiny little larva or little firefly worm in the soil area. And those little larvae are very good predators. And they're going to get at some soft-bellied insects like slugs and snails, things that really hurt our gardens that when we're trying to grow food. So they're a very important part of the ecosystem. Another thing that is very important about them is their bioindicators. They're pretty sensitive. So when we start seeing less and less fireflies, we know that we have a problem.
And as far as the numbers have go over the past decades across Georgia specifically, and if you want to get into even across the continental US, how have populations of lightning bugs changed?
Okay. Well, as far as numbers go, it's really hard to put hard fact numbers because we really haven't been researching fireflies that long. But anecdotally, I know that every year people will come in my office and sit down and say, when I was young, we used to go out and see fireflies everywhere, and now we don't see them. And why is that? And we can give them pretty good ideas of what's happening out there. So we know that what we're seeing less fireflies, but we don't really have any hard data, hard numbers. One of the reasons is because we have so many different species, and it's hard to tell unless you really have been doing this a while what species you're looking at, because a lot of them look very similar if you're holding them in your hand. A lot of times we have to use flashes and maybe get them under a microscope to tell what species we have. But we, as a population, have common sense and know we're seeing less of them. So one of my jobs as an outreach person is to teach people why that is and to help them increase the firefly populations in their area.
And you mentioned specifically the eastern firefly earlier. What are some of the biggest populations of fireflies that we see here, and which ones do you think are possibly most at risk when it comes to population decline?
Okay, so our eastern firefly is also called the Big Dipper. That is the one that we most commonly see right after twilight. Most of the time, that is the one you're going to see. We also have some pretty interesting ones. We also have the blue ghost firefly, and that's one you might be hearing a little bit more about. It stays lower to the ground, and its flash is a little more blue. We see a lot of those around waterfalls in our state parks, and a lot of swampy areas. We'll see a lot of those type of things in parks. We're very excited that we have these parks because we know that those parks aren't going to be demolished for a subdivision. So we can feel that as long as the park people are protecting that area, that those fireflies will continue to grow. I think all fireflies are pretty much at risk because of the fact that we are growing in population. More and more people moving in mean more and more area removed for subdivisions. We also are putting on our night lights and leaving them on all night long. And that is really detrimental to our fireflies. We also know that since a big part of their life cycle is near or under the soil line, anything that we put in or on the soil line, as far as chemicals in our lawns, are going to affect that population. So, all of those things together really mean that all of those fireflies are going to be at risk. But the good news is, of course, that we can do something about that. We have the power to do something about that. We can turn those lights off at night. We can use lighting that's a little more friendly toward these insects. We can quit putting chemicals in our lawns. We can quit bagging up our leaves. We can kind of leave some nature the way it is, and we will hopefully start seeing some of our firefly populations increase.
And a lot of those are great ideas for people to specifically at their homes really help out with the lightning bug populations. Are there any conservation efforts or anything going on across Georgia or the Southeast in order to help lightning bug population either stay constant or hopefully increase?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I'm working very closely with the Fannin County um, Chamber of Commerce. Believe it or not, the Chamber of Commerce in Fannin County, Georgia is very conservation minded. And they work with me on educating visitors who come to the mountains, because Fannin County is a mountain community, and permanent residents as well, on come and see our fireflies. But when you're here, let me teach you a little bit about them, and let's do those practices. When you're visiting or when you're at home, turn those lights off. So there is a huge amount of attention given to, hey, we may lose these fireflies, so let's do some things about them. So there's a big push educational outreach wise. There's also the Atlanta Firefly Project, and Xerxes are also involved in trying to document some of our firefly populations. So those are two organizations working toward that. And all of a sudden now, fireflies, I'm getting more questions about them, more people interested in them. And I think a lot of that has been our push to start saving them. So the more we talk about it, the more others get interested. And then we start a whole conservation movement. So I'm really happy to see that, and really happy that there's partners like the Fannin County Chamber of Commerce who are really willing to work with business owners and homeowners and visitors to our area to help our firefly populations.
Yeah, I mean, I know I say it every summer. 20 years ago, I used to catch lightning bugs every summer. They would see tons of them, and now I don't notice them as much anymore. And
Right.
when it comes to studying the populations, you said you don't have exact numbers. It's hard to kind of quantify exactly how many there are across North Georgia, across the state. What gaps do we have in kind of understanding the population and just how the overall maybe fluctuations of the numbers of fireflies or lightning bugs change?
Well, that's a very good question. Number one is we're getting more and more researchers, and that's what we need. 15 years ago, we didn't have very many people studying fireflies. I think Lynn Faust, who's a very famous firefly expert out of University of Tennessee, kind of led the charge. So we're getting more scientists interested because they do play an important role in our ecosystem. It's not just, oh, I'm going to miss the fireflies. They have a role to play that's important. So we need to study them. So getting more researchers out there studying them and seeing what populations we have and learning more about their habitat and their needs will go a long way in protecting them down the road. So we're really kind of at the cusp of getting to more information so that we know what we're doing to help them.
And you mentioned that the things that they eat, so slugs, populations of those kind, if the lightning bug population continues to decline, would possibly go up. So what are some of the long-term impacts that a declining population of lightning bugs would have on the ecosystem?
Well, you pull away lightning bugs, you have a gap. You have a gap in that ecosystem, in that web of insects and creatures. So, right off the top of the bat, we'd say some of those garden insect pests like slugs and snails would increase, which would be more problematic for those of us who are trying to grow gardens, that type of thing. And because we really are starting to study them, there are going to be roles that they play that we don't know about yet. And that's, if we lose them, there could be a bigger gap than we realize right now. And then, of course, nostalgically and non-scientifically, what's summer without the lightning bugs? We all like to sit outside at the end of a summer day when it starts to cool and watch them. And I think it would be a big loss for all of us if we didn't see that anymore.
So, do you think that it's possible to restore populations of lightning bugs, and how do you think that that would be done?
Yes, one of the great things is I think it's one of those environmental issues that we can all make a difference. We all actually can do things, like we mentioned, with the lighting and keeping chemicals out of our lawns and just leaving the leaves for all of the larvae to run around under. All of these things are easy for homeowners to do. We just need to be aware of them. And when I educate homeowners and do workshops and teach them, then they're like, oh, okay, that's easy. I can go home and do that. And then you're creating a more favorable environment. So it is one of those issues that we can really, as homeowners in Georgia, make a difference in our firefly populations. And that's empowering and that's really neat. And that's something we can teach our kids and our grandkids.
Thank you so much, Becky, for joining us. I love the lightning bugs. I'm sure everyone shares the same sentiment. So, one last time, I know you've gone over it twice already, but what are the specific things that homeowners can do to help increase the lightning bug population?
All right, really simple. First thing, turn off those outdoor lights at night. You can actually go to darksky.org and they can give you some alternatives if you really have to have lighting on at night. There are some things you can do to lessen the impacts. Number two, just be careful and mindful what you're putting in your ground. Make sure those chemicals are absolutely needed. If you don't have to use them, don't. Keep your wild areas wild. Let some of the grass grow a little taller. Let some of that shrubby area on the corner of your property get a little more wild. Those are things that we can all do, and we will start seeing hopefully an increase in our populations, and that just adds to the joy of summer in Georgia.
Becky Griffin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me and enjoy those lightning bugs this summer.
I will.